This title is so crazy that I think this video is fake, but it seems like it's real. Let's find out.
2024. On the 1st of February 2024, Sheldon Johnson appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience. 38 days later, he was arrested and charged with murder. It was
No
episode
way.
2096 with Joe Rogan, Sheldon Johnson, and another person named Josh Dubin. Josh had been on the podcast 6 different times before, explaining
6.
on an earlier episode that he was a lawyer who worked with wrongfully convicted felons.
We're here to get the word out about wrongful convictions.
In 3 out of 6 of Josh's appearances, he'd bring these wrongful convicts to tell their story.
He spent 3 decades in jail for murders that he didn't commit.
So when Josh brought in
Wow.
Sheldon Johnson, it seemed this would
30
be
years.
another positive episode, but it quickly became apparent that Sheldon was slightly different.
I figured we'd do something a little bit different. Typically, the person
What's crazy is he looks so like well
Into
kept.
my
Is
right
the word I'm
for
looking
it.
for? Like you wouldn't expect.
I figured we'd do something a little bit different. Typically, the person sitting to my right is someone that was wrongfully convicted. Sheldon is guilty.
Sheldon had only just
Oh.
been released from a 25-year prison stint, but Josh had brought him on specifically as an example of someone who'd been given an unfair amount of time, believing Sheldon never deserved his 25 years in prison. Well, you can be the judge of that. Born 1975, Sheldon Johnson grew up in the Martin Luther King Jr. Towers, aka a poverty-stricken housing project in Harlem, New York City. His entire family tree had been in and out of prisons.
My father was incarcerated. He did about 15 years. I was incarcerated. My grandfather was incarcerated. My great-grandfather
me.
was a slave. And my son killed somebody when he was 12 years old.
While
Whoa, that's no longer like a coincidence. There's something happening. Spiritually, I definitely know there's something happening, but guys, is it me? Am I tripping? Let me know in the comment section down below. That is not normal.
Sheldon was the only one in his family who had functional hearing.
My mother's deaf. My father's deaf. My sister's deaf. My aunt is deaf. I grew up in a deaf household.
Therefore, his father, a drug dealer, brought Sheldon along to help him translate deals. And by the age of 12, Sheldon had joined the exact same line of work.
I started selling
Wow.
drugs. Guy offered me an opportunity to be a lookout, and I would just stand there, and eventually I just slowly moved up the ranks. It turned me into this person that I was never meant to be.
As a result, he began to rack up charges.
Driving without a license, standing on the corner, little small petty drug cases.
And spent most of his teens in the Rikers Island prison, although it'd be after his release at the age of 21 that things went downhill badly. He'd commit 2 different armed robberies, receiving a sentence of 50 years in prison, which Josh argued was incredibly unfair, given only one person received minor injuries.
He got hit in the head with the gun right here on the side of his head, and he got 2 stitches, and they gave me 25 years for that case.
Did you hit him in the
Wow.
head?
No.
Regardless, prison is where Sheldon realized he had to turn his life around,
It was at that moment I really said I have to change my life. I just can't do this.
beginning a prison journal about hope, change, and reform. In his entry letter to my younger self, it explained just because you're surrounded by violence does not mean that violence is the way to solve your problems. Sheldon, 2 wrongs do not make a right. Violence only begets violence. Learn how to respond and not react. In a different entry, he'd state, as we know, I'm currently in prison, which I've learned does one of 2 significant things to its occupants. Brings the best out of them or the worst.
I saw individuals who were at their worst, and I saw guys who were at their best. The guys who were at their best were guys who were involved in education, post-secondary education programs.
Realizing the role model prisoners were those with an education, Sheldon spent years educating himself.
I got into school, I got my GED, and then I went on to obtain my bachelor's in behavioral science from Mercy. I stopped smoking weed, I stopped smoking cigarettes. I started working in the law library. I discovered that I had a knack for complicated things, case law, and I was actually helping guys get out of prison.
He'd further add to his journal, I have grown dramatically in these 14 years, when I could have easily withered away. I've learned that I love Shakespeare, that I love acting, that I love writing, that I enjoy reading philosophy, that I love reading criminal law, that I love writing legalese. Sheldon had changed his life to such an extent, BuzzFeed advocated for his release back in 2016. He became a
really?
model inmate, said David Roth, the prison social worker. His days were so full that he went to bed exhausted and fell asleep immediately. As a result of his good behavior, Sheldon was released after 25 years of his 50-year sentence, appearing on a podcast called Success After Lockdown, on which he'd implied that he'd never go back to prison.
I'm reflecting, I'm saying to myself like, yo, I can't spend the next 50 years like this.
When he'd appear on Joe Rogan 1 month later, Sheldon again implied that he wouldn't go back to jail.
Individuals who have been shown to acquire associate's degrees and bachelor's degrees are like 92% less likely to return back to prison.
With Josh using Sheldon as an example, that change was always possible.
How do you make change happen? He's living it and making it happen. Look at this beautiful mind and how he articulates himself.
He began working for the Queen's Defenders, helping troubled youth.
I was saying, I mean, look at him. He does not look like... You guys get what I mean, right? His appearance, the way he's dressed, he's not like your typical
To catch
gang
these
member.
kids before they fall. And I want to show them the way.
And even began to consider more formal education,
Sheldon asked me, should I go to law school before we came here?
in the process expressing his disbelief that he'd turned his life around.
I just came from the bowels of hell. 25 years in prison, and now I'm in the sky above the clouds in the heavens, headed to a destination to talk about change and to talk about all of the things that brought me to this place today.
Joe Rogan even posted a clip titled, "Sentenced to 50 years, Sheldon Johnson decided to turn his life around." However, Sheldon would make one final important claim.
But this is how fast your life can change from just one simple mistake.
This became reality only 38 days later.
He claimed that he had turned his life around after spending most of his adult life in prison. In fact, last year, he started working for the Queen's Public Defender's Office. Well, now he is accused of killing a man and then dismembering his body.
Sheldon was childhood friends with a man named Colin Small, with whom he'd also spent over 10 years in prison. Therefore, upon Sheldon's release, Small was helping Johnson get back on his feet. However, at some point, their friendship took a turn. On the 6th of March 2024, police received a call from a tenant who lived in New York, claiming to have heard 2 gunshots from Colin Small's apartment, as well as a voice begging, "Please don't, I have a family." Police drove over to the flat and knocked on the door, only to find Sheldon Johnson inside, who claimed that Colin Small had apparently gone upstate. Well, police searched the apartment and found half of Colin Small's body, finding the other half back at Sheldon's apartment, in addition to concrete and a Tyvek suit. CCTV outside Colin's apartment showed Sheldon Johnson entering and exiting, trying to conceal his identity with a range of different disguises. In one of these stills, he's seen wearing the exact same jacket as he was in a photo he took for the Queen's Defenders. Sheldon was therefore arrested and charged with Colin's murder, screaming "I'm innocent" as he was placed into the cop car. Sheldon maintained this innocence all the way to court.
Yesterday, Sheldon Johnson pleaded not.
Sheldon
That
maintained
photographer is laughing. I don't know if he's laughing at him or like what is going on.
Colin's murder,
He screamed,
screaming
"I'm
"I'm innocent" as he was placed
Crazy.
into the cop car. Sheldon maintained this innocence all the way to court.
Yesterday, Sheldon Johnson pleaded not guilty to the charges. He had quite a few supporters inside the courtroom.
As the comments on his episode changed overnight. Imagine being locked up for being wronged by the system for over 25 years, only to
And then
prove that the
making them
system
right.
was right. Amazing. The judge who gave him 50 years must feel pretty smart right now. "I really believed I was gonna die in prison." Well, you're not wrong, buddy. Sheldon's own father stated, "I'm surprised my son was arrested. I was shocked. He learned and studied in prison for 26 years. He is a good man. He was doing work in a law office. There were no problems, but I doubt nobody was as shocked as Josh Dubin." He ended Sheldon Johnson's episode stating,
I'm very thoughtful in who I bring on. I think this was one of the best ones yet.
but is still yet to talk publicly since Sheldon's new allegations. Joe, on the other hand, talked about it recently.
He was guilty before, and we knew he was guilty, but he got 50 years.
Right.
And then he was talking about he turned his life around this, like, a month after he was on the podcast.
Yeah.
Cut some dude's head off. Homie didn't understand new HD security cameras.
Theorizing that prison had only made him worse.
Was that because he spent 25 fucking years in jail, which is an insane amount of time to
Yeah.
be locked up in a
Goodness
prison.
me,
and
let's see the
then
comment section.
Expect to acclimate.
He turned his life around 360 degrees. Literally. Educate himself in prison enough to make... Yeah, crazy, man. Spends 25 years in prison. Gets out and goes back. I'm telling you. Yeah, it's a curse that runs in their family. That's all I could say. The whole death situation, the whole prison thing that he was explaining, there is heavy curses. Like, that's not normal. That is not normal. 50 years in prison. Narrator's goofy. Because that's the same thing that was going through my mind. And because he spent 50 years in prison, and that took him out this hard. And then he came out, and then he want to do it again. That's literally the narrator's voice. Wow. Guys, look. This is why you need a vision. People are falling short because they lack vision. If you have a vision, it's going to change your life around. Because your choices are going to be dictated by your vision. Say, for example, you want to become a successful entrepreneur. Run multiple businesses. Why am I going to get involved in robbery or doing harm? Because I know that takes away from my vision. If I do that long enough, I get arrested. Vision, boom, 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 down the drain. Get a vision. A lot of you guys are going left, right, and center. Don't know what's going. Shiny object syndrome because you have no vision. Where am I going to be in 10 years' time? You don't think about that. Not even once. If you need help anyways, link is in the description down below. Join the Patreon. And yeah, share this video with someone who needs to see this because this was very interesting. God bless you. I'll catch you on the next one.